Hello plant people, it is Nora the Leca Queen. Thank you for joining me. Today we're going to be talking about yellow leaves. Yellowing leaves on your precious house plants. Now this is something that a lot of people get, a lot of people don't like, and we're going to be unpacking what causes yellow leaves and in the same vein, how you can help your plants prevent this where you can. I have my two plants here that are going to help me discuss this. I've got my Philodendron Mamei. That is my Philodendron Mamei there, looking lovely, living in her rectangular pot in Leca, and she has yellowing leaves. I also have my Monstera monkey mask. Now this is my Monstera Adansonii monkey mask. I've had this plant living on a moss pole for quite a few months now, and she was a gorgeous specimen. Just take a look at this picture and see how this plant evolved from a very small plant to a lovely, luscious plant living in Leca. I will show you what this plant looks like now. This is my plant now. She is absolutely pitiful. Looking there, you can see all these yellowing leaves. She's got all these brown spots. Her leaves are just dying. This plant is dying. The plant is actually dying. And when you look at how this plant used to be, it is such a shame. Look at that. It is so terrible. So stick around and I will show you what I am going to do to help this plant and treat this plant and get it looking the way it used to look. What causes yellowing leaves? Moisture stress. Moisture stress is one of the commonest and most important cause of yellowing leaves. So what do I mean when I say moisture stress? So moisture stress could be underwatering or overwatering. So your plant is not receiving a consistent supply of water. Sometimes you put too much, sometimes you put too little, and that can manifest as yellowing leaves. When you've got a plant living in Leca, that sort of almost gets rid of that problem because the plant is actually able to absorb the amount of water that it needs when it needs it. So semi-hydroponics will fix that for you. But if you've got your plant in soil, how do you know? One of the things that can help to regulate your watering is a moisture meter. I've got a moisture meter here. This is back when I had plants in soil. I used to use this. And this is a little device that's just got, you plonk it in your soil. It's got a little probe. You put that probe in the soil and it will, that dial will move and it will tell you whether your plant is wet or dry. So you know that you need to water it or you don't need to water it. But you need to water your plant well. So when you water your plant, make sure you're watering it completely. You're not just going there with little dribs and drabs of water. Get a good amount of water and make sure that water is running through and the plant is well watered. So using one of these is really good. So make sure you're watering your plants regularly and watering your plants well. Another really important thing that leads to yellow leaves is light. Light is really important when you're taking care of plants. Light, or the lack of it, is what caused my Monstera Adansonii to start looking like this. When I was living in my old house, which had way better lighting than this one, my Monstera was thriving. She was just doing so well. And then when I moved to this home and I put her in a spot that obviously she didn't like because there wasn't as much light, she started just going downhill. I've had to repair her once before, but that clearly didn't work and we are where we're at now. So light is very important. Make sure that you've got light for your plant, and if you don't have sufficient light in your home, seriously consider investing in some grow lights. Other environmental conditions, things like cold and heat. When a plant is living in a home, it does get exposed to all these things because we do heat our home. So you might have a certain pocket in your home. Maybe you've got your plant living under a vent, which you shouldn't have. And then that plant is going to be more likely to be affected by that heat and will manifest as yellow leaves. or the plant is cold. It's not warm enough where the plant sits, and it will manifest with the yellow leaves. And that's exactly what happened with this plant. So I put this plant right next to a window, so it wasn't getting the greatest light, but also that window is single glazed and it is really cold where this plant sits. So that's probably why it ended up looking like this. So light, temperature, very important. If you've got a plant that's living in soil, and sometimes even a plant that's living in leca, yellowing leaves might also be an indicator that your plant needs to be repotted. Once you see a plant that's got yellow leaves, just look and see what's happening with the roots, because yellowing leaves is an indication that not all is well. And one of the things that might not be well is the root situation. So the plant might benefit from a repot. Just give the plant pot next size up, and that might help your problem. Humidity. If your plant is developing yellow leaves, it might be that it is not as humid as it would like to be. Some plants like to be more humid than others, so you might find that just upping the humidity level in your home might prevent this. And upping the humidity level might just mean, some people talk about putting some pebbles on a tray and putting some water there. I don't know how effective that is, to be honest. I suspect it's not that effective. Another thing you could do is bunch up all your plants, group your plants up together, and those areas where you've got your plants grouped up together, they tend to have a higher residual humidity than other areas in your home. But of course, the ultimate thing that you could do is grab a humidifier. Once you've got a humidifier going, you can actually better control the humidity in your home, and your plants will love you for it. Of course, one of the most dreaded things that causes yellowing leaves is pests. And of course, we all hate pests, spider mites, mealybugs, thrips, things like that. They might eventually cause yellowing leaves. So when you see yellowing leaves, one of the first things you should do is inspect your plants and make sure there aren't any pests. And if there are, you're isolating that plant, checking all the plants around it, making sure that they don't have that infestation, and treating that plant, or if it's completely beyond repair, getting rid of it completely. Another thing that causes yellow leaves actually is nutritional deficiencies. So you might find that a plant that does not have certain nutrients will start to develop yellowing leaves. So if a plant lacks nitrogen, for example, you'll start to see yellowing in the older leaves first. And then as the new leaves are coming, they're a lighter green than they normally would be. So you might suspect that your plant has a nitrogen deficiency. And if, for example, it's got a potassium deficiency, you might find that the yellowing is along the edges and not necessarily all over the leaf. And different nutritional deficiencies will manifest in different ways. But the most important thing really is to make sure that you fertilize your plants, and fertilize your plant with a well-balanced fertilizer or nutrient. And once you do that, you're not going to have those issues. And of course, last but not least, one of the most important causes of yellowing leaves, like my Monstera Mamei, is that the leaves are old and it's time for them to go. So when you take a look at your plant, look at this plant, the rest of the leaves are doing really, really well. There's a new leaf coming there. There's another new leaf coming down there. And all the plant is doing is getting rid of the old plants. And if you don't like the look of that, all you need to do is just clip them off and your plant goes back to its wondrous glory. So no need to fret. Sometimes yellow leaves are part of the life cycle of a plant. Everything that lives must go to the next phase. So same thing, we pass on, leaves pass on as well. So if everything else is okay with your plant, no need to fret. It's just a natural process that the plant will go through. First thing that I'm going to do is separate the moss pole from this metal rod, and then I can put it up on my bench top and start to work on it. That's the moss pole down. Oops. And I now need to separate this top moss pole from the bottom moss pole. That's the top moss pole. There's nothing there, so I can use that for another plant. I can then grab my plant and look at that. Look at how sad that looks. Pull the plant out of the leca, and those are its roots there. And as you can see, even the roots are looking quite sad. There is a bit of root rot going on there, which does not surprise me at all. Because remember, it takes everything for a plant to grow: nutrition, water, and light. So if one of these things is out of balance, it's very difficult to maintain, to keep that plant looking good and growing well. So what I want to do now is separate the plant from the moss pole. I'm going to put this down on my mat and I'll bring you down. So as you can see, these are all dead and dying. What I want to do is get some good cuttings from this plant. I'll get some good cuttings, propagate them, and get rid of all the dead and dying ones. In order to help me get the cuttings, I'm going to separate the plastic sheet back off this moss pole from the metal mesh. And all I do is clip off the cable ties that hold it together, and that should come off nicely. That is that off, and as you can see, you've got some fabulous area roots coming through there. Now I want to get the best looking ones. I've got my knife that I'm going to use to chop off the best looking plants. The moss is moist, so it's really easy for me to pull out the area roots from there. And you can actually look at that. That's a root there. And that's going all the way to the bottom. Look at that. That's how long that area root is. This is how fabulous moss poles are. These are the parts of the plant that are not doing so well. I am going to discard these. These are the cuttings I've been able to obtain from the plant. So look at that. That one looks really good. The leaves are still quite decent. The stem is quite thick. Those are the aerial roots there. I've got another one here. This one looks good as well. I'll get rid of some of these leaves that are really looking quite bad, like that one. Just get rid of that. Get rid of that one. And I've got this one here. Still looks good. And I have this one here. This one's also a pretty thick stem, so I'm confident that the new leaves that will be coming off of this will be quite large as well. I'm just going to make some cuttings out of these. So for this one, I've got that. So I'll get 2 cuttings from that one. And oh, I don't know. Maybe I'll leave that as 1. So that'll be 3. And then I'll get rid of this bottom leaf here. And that'll be another cutting there. And this one's actually a tip cutting. So might get rid of that. And have that. So these are the cuttings that I've got from my Monstera Adansonii monkey mask. I've got 5 of them. If you're finding value from this video, please don't forget to like and subscribe. Thanks. I'll put these in a propagation jar in with my special sauce, which comprises of root zone and Clonex clone solution to help them root. I'll probably have them living there for a number of weeks. And then when they're good to go, I'll pot them up in Leca, put them back on the moss pole that they were on before. So I'm just going to remove all the dead material that was on that moss pole. I will reuse the sphagnum moss. I'll reuse the structure of that moss pole and put this plant back on that moss pole, put it back in the Leca, and come summer and come spring, that plant will start to grow, and maybe I can get it back to looking like this, the way it used to look. So yeah, that is what I'm going to do with my yellowing leaf plant. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and I will see you in my next video. Thanks. Bye.